Don't spill the Bordeaux. You couldn't afford it. The sneer cut through the hum of the upscale Manhattan restaurant, sharp and loud coming from the VIP table, where a man in a tailored suit leaned back with a smirk. To the rich folks in that gilded hall, the young waitress was nothing a shadow moving through their world of crystal and caviar, unworthy of their glance. Her name was Anna Carter, but nobody cared to know it. She was just the help. Her plain black uniform slightly wrinkled her dark hair, pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, just a quiet kind of beauty that didn't scream for attention. Minutes later, when three armed robbers crashed through the doors and the whole room hit the floor in panic, Anna stood alone, calm as stone. In just 15 seconds, she took down all three. Her movements, sharp and precise, revealed a Navy Special Forces past nobody could have guessed. The billionaire at the corner table watched stunned, and the room fell silent, their judgment exposed like a raw wound. Anna was 25 with a face that felt familiar, like someone you'd known in another life. Not glamorous, not polished, just real. Her eyes, a deep hazel, had a way of seeing through you, like she could read the room without trying. She moved with purpose, every step deliberate, her hands steady, even when carrying a tray stacked with delicate glasses. Liel wasn't just any restaurant. It was a fortress of wealth where the chandeliers glittered like frozen rain, and the air carried the faint scent of truffle oil and privilege. The patrons were the kind who didn't just dine. They performed their laughter and clinking glasses a show of power. Anna didn't fit here, not in their eyes. Her scuffed black flats, her lack of polish, her silence, it all marked her as an outsider. They didn't know she'd been raised in a world just as elite, in a family that owned half the skyline, taught to carry herself with restraint and dignity. But Anna had walked away from that life, choosing simplicity over status, and now she paid the price for it every shift. She'd been at Licio for 7 months, taking the late shifts, the ones where the tips were good, but the customers were brutal. Her co-workers liked her, mostly because she didn't stir drama. She'd clear tables in silence, nod at their complaints, and never snap back. No matter how cruel the jab, it wasn't weakness, it was choice. Anna had seen real stakes places where a wrong move cost lives, not just egos. She'd learned to pick her battles, and these people with their designer bags and cutting remarks weren't worth her energy. But that night the air felt heavier, like the world was holding its breath. The VIP table was louder than usual, their voices carrying over the soft jazz playing in the background. Anna moved through the room, her tray balanced, her face blank, but her eyes missed nothing. The man who'd sneered about the Bordeaux was Richard Vance, mid-50s, with slick-back gray hair and a gold Rolex that caught the light every time he gestured. He was a hedge fund king, the kind who would talk about market volatility like it was a personality trait. His wife Candace sat beside him, her red dress tight, her lips glossy, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. She was the type who'd compliment your shoes while making sure you knew they were cheap. Across from them was Derek, a 30-something crypto bro with a tan too perfect for New York winters, and his girlfriend Lauren, whose blonde highlights and diamond earrings screamed new money. They were the worst kind of table, loud, entitled, and itching to make someone feel small. Anna was their favorite target. As Anna approached with a fresh bottle of wine, Richard held up his glass, inspecting it like a jeweler. "You missed a spot," he said, pointing to an imaginary smudge. "Guess they don't teach cleaning in whatever backwater you crawled out of." The table laughed, Candace's giggle the loudest. Anna paused, her fingers brushing the bottle's neck, then set it down with a soft clink. "I'll get you a new glass," she said, her voice even, her eyes steady. She turned away, but not before Lauren leaned toward Derek, loud enough for Anna to hear. "She's got no class. Bet she's never even been to a place like this except to scrub the floors." Anna's shoulders didn't tense. Her stride didn't falter, but her hand lingered on the edge of her tray, knuckles pale for just a moment. The manager, Greg, was no better. A wiry guy with a permanent sheen of sweat on his forehead, he was always hovering, trying to keep the big spenders happy. He caught Anna by the elbow as she passed the kitchen door, his voice low but harsh. "Stay clear of the billionaire's table. He doesn't need you tripping over him." He jerked his head toward the corner where James Colton sat alone. Colton was 35, lean, with dark hair and eyes that didn't miss much. His suit was understated, but screamed money, and his presence was like a magnet. People noticed him without trying. He was scrolling through his phone, ignoring the room, But Anna caught his glance for half a second. She nodded at Greg, her voice flat. Understood. She didn't argue, didn't explain. She just kept moving. Before the chaos hit, there was a moment, a small one, but heavy. Anna was refilling a pitcher at the bar when she paused, her eyes catching on a small photo tucked into her apron pocket. It was old creased, showing a younger Anna in fatigues, standing next to a group of soldiers in a dusty courtyard. The bartender, Mike, noticed her staring. Family, he asked, wiping down a glass. Anna slipped the photo back into her pocket, her face unreadable. Something like that, she said and turned away. Mike didn't push. Nobody did. Anna wasn't the kind to invite questions, and most people didn't care enough to ask. But not everyone ignored her. A hostess, Jenna, a 22-year-old with a sharp tongue and a habit of sucking up to the rich guests, caught Anna by the bar later that night. She was twirling a strand of her hair, her eyes glinting, with something mean. You know, Anna, you should smile more. You're bringing down the vibe. Nobody wants a gloomy waitress serving their $500 dinner. Jenna's voice was loud enough to draw a few glances from nearby tables. Anna set the pitcher down, her movement slow, deliberate. I'm here to work, not perform, she said, her tone calm but firm. Jenna smirked, undeterred. Yeah, well, maybe if you tried harder, you wouldn't look like you just rolled out of a shelter. A couple at a nearby table snickered, and Anna's hand paused on the pitcher, her fingers tightening just enough to show a flicker of strain before she walked away. Hey, real quick, while this story's sinking in, grab your phone, hit that like button, and drop a comment below. Maybe share a time someone judged you wrong, made you feel small. It helps keep this channel alive, telling stories like Anna's for folks who've been there. And please hit subscribe. It's a small thing, but it means we can keep sharing these moments of truth. All right, let's get back to what happened. The night was rolling along the restaurant, buzzing with the usual mix of arrogance and wine, when the front doors slammed open. 3 men in black ski masks burst in their boots, thudding on the polished floor, guns raised high. Everybody down! The leader shouted, his voice rough, like he'd smoked a pack a day for years. The room exploded into chaos. Glasses shattered as guests dove under tables, their expensive suits and dresses dragging through spilled wine. Richard Vance yanked Candace down, his Rolex catching on the tablecloth, tearing it. Candace let out a sharp cry, clutching her purse like it was her lifeline. Derek was already on his knees, muttering, "Take what you want, just don't shoot." Lauren's sobs were loud, her mascara streaking down her face. James Colton, the billionaire, froze, his face pale, his fingers fumbling to pull off his watch and ring, ready to hand them over. Anna was in the center of the room, holding a tray of empty glasses. She didn't drop it. She didn't scream. She just stood there, her eyes scanning the robbers, 1, 2, 3, like she was counting exits. The leader, a stocky guy with a scar above his eyebrow, zeroed in on her. He stormed over, his gun aimed at her chest. "What's wrong with you? Get on the floor!" he barked, his voice echoing. The other 2 robbers were shouting at the guests, waving their guns, demanding wallets and jewelry. A woman at a nearby table, her pearls clutched tight, whispered, "She's insane. Why isn't she moving?" Anna's grip on the tray was steady, her breathing slow, almost too calm. The leader stepped closer, the barrel of his gun now inches from her forehead. "You deaf, Neil?" As the leader loomed over her, a guest at a nearby table, a middle-aged woman in a velvet blazer, hissed under her breath, "She's going to ruin this for all of us." Her voice was low but venomous, her eyes darting between Anna and the gun. She clutched her husband's arm, her manicured nails digging into his sleeve. Why can't she just do what they say? Her husband, a balding man with a silk tie, nodded, his whisper sharp. "She's nobody. She's going to get a shot." Anna's face didn't change, but her fingers adjusted the tray slightly, her knuckles brushing the edge. The room's tension was suffocating the air, thick with fear and judgment. Every glare aimed at Anna, blaming her for daring to stand. Richard Vance, half hidden under his table, hissed through clenched teeth, "Don't be stupid, he'll shoot you." His voice was shaking, but it carried that same sneer, like Anna was an idiot for not obeying. Candace, her face twisted in panic, snapped, "You're going to get us all killed." Derek, still on the floor, added, "Don't drag us down with you, you moron." Lauren's voice was a whimper, but it cut just as deep. "She's nobody. Why is she acting like she's something? The room was a storm of fear and contempt, every eye on Anna, judging her, blaming her. They didn't want her to fight. They wanted her to break to prove she was as small as they thought. Anna didn't break. She exhaled, slow and deliberate, her eyes locked on the leaders. In one smooth motion, she shifted her weight, stepping just outside the gun's line of fire. Before he could react, she grabbed his wrist, twisted it hard, and the gun hit the floor with a clatter. Her elbow came down fast, catching his jaw, and he dropped like a sack of flour. The tray in her other hand didn't even shake. She set it down on a table, her movements precise, like she was just clearing a plate. The room gasped, a collective, "What just happened?" rippling through the air. The other two robbers froze, their guns still raised, but their confidence cracked. Anna stood there, her posture loose but ready, her eyes never leaving them. In that frozen moment, a waiter named Tony, who'd always been friendly to Anna, crawled out from behind a table, his face pale. "Anna, stop," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You're making it worse." He was young, barely 20, with a nervous habit of tugging at his collar. He'd always shared tips with her, but now his eyes were wide with fear, his hands raised like he was pleading. "Just get down, please. You're not a cop." The guests nearby nodded, their whispers growing louder. "He's right," a man in a tuxedo muttered. "She's out of control." Anna glanced at Tony, her expression unreadable, then turned back to the robbers. Her silence wasn't defiance, it was focus. But to the room it looked like arrogance. Back in another life, Anna had been somewhere else, a dusty street in a war zone, the air thick with heat and the smell of diesel. She was 20 in fatigues, her rifle slung across her back. Her team was moving through a checkpoint, kids running nearby, shouting for candy. She had tossed a piece to a boy, his grin wide and gap-toothed, before her sergeant called her back to focus. That moment flashed through her, now unbidden, as she stood in Lyciel. She pushed it down, her hands steady, her focus sharp. The restaurant wasn't a battlefield, but her body knew what to do. The second robber, a lanky guy with twitchy hands, snapped out of his shock. He charged at her, screaming, "You think you're a hero, bitch?" His gun was still in his hand, but his aim was sloppy, his steps panicked. The guests didn't cheer. They turned on her. Candace, crouched behind a chair, shrieked, "She's going to get us killed." Her voice was shrill, her hands shaking as she clutched her purse. Greg, the manager, was trembling, his face red with panic. "Stand down, Anna. Let the police handle it." Derek, still on the floor, muttered, "She's out of her damn mind." Even Lauren, sobbing, managed to jab, "She's nobody. She's going to ruin everything." Anna didn't look at them. She ducked under the robber's wild swing, spun, and drove her foot into his stomach. He crashed through a glass table, the shatter loud enough to make half the room flinch. As the glass settled, a woman in a gold dress, her earrings dangling like chandeliers, stood up slightly, her voice dripping with disdain. "Who does she think she is? Some action movie star?" She was shaking, but her words were sharp, meant to cut. "She's putting on a show, and we're all paying for it." Her husband, a heavyset man with a Rolex matching Richard's, nodded. "She's reckless. A waitress shouldn't be playing hero." Anna's hand paused on the table where she'd set her tray, her fingers brushing the edge, but she didn't turn. The room's hostility was palpable, a wave of resentment crashing over her. They didn't see courage. They saw a nobody stepping out of line. The third robber was different. He didn't rush in blindly. He pulled a knife, its blade catching the chandelier light, and moved toward her, slow and deliberate. "You're dead," he growled, lunging low, aiming for her side. Anna sidestepped, her movements fluid, like she'd done this 1,000 times. She caught his wrist, twisted it, until the knife flipped into her hand, and used his momentum to slam him to the ground. His head hit the floor with a dull thud. It was over in 15 seconds. 3 men down, groaning or unconscious, the room stunned into silence. Anna stood over them, the knife in her grip, her breathing barely heavier than before. Her eyes were sharp, like they could cut through steel. Right then, a guest, an older man with a silver beard, his suit crumpled from crawling, pointed at Anna, his voice loud enough to carry. "She's dangerous. You saw how she moved." His wife, clutching a diamond bracelet, nodded frantically. "She's not one of us. She's got to be some kind of plant, maybe working with them." The accusation hung in the air, absurd but vicious, and a few heads turned, murmurs spreading. Anna set the knife down carefully, her movements slow, deliberate, as if to prove she wasn't a threat. But her eyes flicked to the man just for a second, and he shrank back, his bravado faltering under her steady gaze. The police arrived minutes later, their radios crackling, their boots heavy on the floor. They cuffed the robbers, dragging them out as they groaned. The guests started to stand, their voices rising in nervous chatter. But the whispers about Anna didn't stop. A man in a pinstripe suit, his tie askew, leaned toward his date. Maybe she's a criminal herself. Normal people don't fight like that. Greg, the manager, was wiping sweat from his brow, his eyes narrow as he approached Anna. "What the hell was that? What have you been hiding from us?" His voice was loud, accusing, like she'd betrayed him by not being helpless. Candace, fixing her hair, added, "She's trouble. I knew it the second I saw her." Anna didn't respond. She just kept clearing glasses, her hands steady, her face blank. One of the cops, a grizzled guy with a buzz cut and a scar on his cheek, stopped dead when he saw her. He lowered his radio, his eyes wide. "My God, Sergeant Anna Carter. I thought you retired." The room went still, every head turning. Anna nodded just once, her voice soft but clear. "I just wanted a normal life." The officer shook his head, a faint smile breaking through. "Navy Special Forces counterterrorism. You trained with my unit back in 18. Saved my ass in Kabul." The guests' faces changed. Richard's mouth tightened. Candace's eyes widened. Derek stared at the floor. Lauren's laugh was gone, replaced by a nervous fidgeting with her earrings. Anna didn't say another word. She didn't need to. As the police worked, a woman in a silk scarf, her hands still trembling, approached Anna cautiously, holding out a napkin. "You dropped this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The napkin was one Anna had tucked into her apron, now crumpled on the floor. The woman's eyes were wide, not with judgment, but with something like awe. Anna took the napkin, her fingers brushing the woman's, and nodded slightly. "Thanks," she said, her tone soft but steady. The woman hesitated, then backed away, her husband pulling her close, whispering something that made her look down. It was the first kind gesture of the night, small but heavy, and Anna tucked the napkin back into her apron, her expression unchanged. But the judgment didn't stop, not entirely. As the police cleared the scene, a businessman at a corner table, his tie loosened, leaned back and scoffed. "At the end of the day, she's just a waitress. Nobody's going to believe she saved us." Candace, brushing wine stains off her dress, added, "She got lucky, that's all. Probably some fluke." Richard nodded, his voice low but sharp. "She's still nobody. Doesn't change a thing." They were embarrassed, their egos bruised. Admitting Anna had saved them meant admitting they'd been wrong about her. And people like them didn't do that. Anna heard every word, but she didn't flinch. She just kept working, stacking plates, her hands steady as ever. During the cleanup, Greg pulled Anna aside again, his face flushed with anger. "You could have gotten us sued." He snapped his hands, gesturing wildly. "You think you're some kind of vigilante? You're fired, Anna. Get your stuff and go." The room quieted, heads turning. Anna set down the stack of plates she was holding, her movements slow, deliberate. "You sure about that?" she asked, her voice low, her eyes locking onto his. Greg faltered, his bravado crumbling under her gaze, but he doubled down. "You heard me. Out." A few guests smirked, Richard among them, as if Anna's defiance only proved their point. She didn't argue. She just picked up her tray and walked to the back. Her steps, even her silence, louder than any protest. James Colton, the billionaire, hadn't spoken through it all. He'd watched, his eyes tracking Anna's every move, his face unreadable. Now he stood brushing off his suit and walked toward her. The room watched, holding its breath. He stopped in front of her, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. "I don't see a waitress," he said, his voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. "I see the only person here who kept her nerve." He extended his hand. Anna looked at it, then at him, her expression calm but searching. She shook his hand, her grip firm, her eyes never wavering. "From today," he said louder, "I appoint her head of security for my corporation." A murmur ran through the room. Richard's jaw dropped. Candace's glass slipped, spilling more wine. Derek looked away, his face red. As Colton spoke, a young busboy, barely 18, who'd been hiding behind the bar, stepped forward, his hands shaking. "I saw what you did," he said to Anna, his voice cracking but loud enough for the room to hear. "You saved us, all of us." His eyes were wide, his face flushed with admiration. The guests shifted uncomfortably, some looking away, others glaring at the boy like he'd betrayed them. Anna met his gaze, her expression softening for the first time that night. She nodded just once and said, "Just doing my job." The busboy swallowed hard, then stepped back, his courage spent. The moment hung in the air, a crack in the room's hostility, but it didn't last. The next morning, the headlines hit like a tidal wave. Billionaire chooses waitress as head of security after robbery. The story spread across social media, security footage from Lissiel leaking online. Anna's takedown was replayed in slow motion, her calm face a stark contrast to the chaos around her. The comments were endless. Some called her a hero. Others clung to their doubts, but the truth was out. Richard Vance's hedge fund took a hit when a viral post called out his Bordeaux sneer. This guy mocked the woman who saved his life. The caption read with a clip of his smug face. His firm issued a panicked statement, but clients were already pulling out, their trust shaken. Candace's charity gala set for the next month lost its main sponsor after her dollar store comment went viral. The backlash was swift. Her socialite friends distanced themselves, their texts going unanswered. A week later, Anna walked into a boardroom for her first day as head of security. The executives, all in tailored suits, went quiet as she entered. One of them, a man with a slick smile, had been at Lissiel that night, seated near Richard's table. He had laughed at Candace's dollar store jab. Now he stood to offer her a chair, his hand trembling slightly. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice overly polite. "We're lucky to have you." Anna nodded, taking the seat without a word. Her desk had that same creased photo now in a small frame. She didn't mention it, didn't need to. The room's deference was new, but her steady gaze was the same. Derek's crypto startup didn't fare much better. A tweet from a tech blogger with 1 million followers read, "Crypto bro mocked a Navy vet who saved his ass. Investors, you cool with this?" His funding round stalled, his inbox flooded with demands for explanations. Lauren, who'd laughed about Anna's shoes, went silent online. Her Instagram locked down after screenshots of her comments spread. The consequences weren't loud or dramatic, just the quiet weight of truth catching up. Anna didn't see most of it. She was already at her new job in a sleek office high above the city, her desk bare except for that same creased photo of her in fatigues. She didn't talk about the headlines, didn't post about the attention. She just did her work, same as always. At a security briefing, one of Colton's aides, a young woman with a nervous smile, approached Anna after the meeting. "I was at Lissiel," she said, her voice low, her hands twisting together. "I didn't say anything that night, but I saw how they treated you. I'm sorry." Anna looked at her, her expression unreadable, then nodded. "It's done," she said, her tone gentle but final. The aide hesitated, then handed Anna a small card with a handwritten note. "Thank you." Anna tucked it into her pocket next to the old photo and walked away. The gesture was small, but it landed like a stone in still water, rippling through her silence. But something had shifted. The way she moved through a room now, the way her eyes scanned for threats, it wasn't invisible anymore. People noticed. They deferred to her, their voices quieter when she spoke. In meetings, her suggestions carried weight, her presence enough to shift the mood. When James Colton walked in, his nod to her was enough to silence the chatter. She wasn't just the woman who'd taken down 3 robbers. She was the woman who'd changed the room without saying a word. Her silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was power. Years ago, Anna had walked away from that life medals pinned to a uniform. She'd packed away missions. She'd never talk about a weight she didn't want to carry. She'd chosen a small apartment, a quiet job, a life where she didn't have to be a hero. But that night in Lissiel, when the doors slammed open and the guns came out, she didn't have a choice. It wasn't about proving anything. It was just who she was. And now, standing at the window of her new office, the city sprawling below, she didn't feel like she'd won. She just felt like herself, steady and sure, the way she'd always been. One evening, as Anna left the office, a street vendor outside the building called out to her, holding up a cheap bracelet. "For you, lady," he said, his grin wide. The moment hit her like a wave. She froze, her hand halfway to her bag, the memory of that dusty market flooding back. She took the bracelet, her fingers brushing the beads, and handed him a bill. "Keep the change," she said, her voice soft. The vendor nodded, unaware of the weight of that small gesture. Anna slipped the bracelet into her pocket next to the photo and the note, and kept walking her steps steady, her eyes forward. For everyone watching who's ever been looked down on, who's ever been told they're not enough, this is your story. You know what it's like to stand tall when the world wants you small. You're not wrong for it. You're not alone. You've carried the weight and you're still here. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing. Anna Carter learns that her strength lies in staying true to herself despite others' judgments. In the face of condescension and hostility, she remains calm and capable, using her Navy Special Forces training to protect those who belittle her. The story reveals that her choice to live simply doesn't diminish her worth or abilities. Anna's lesson is that authenticity and quiet competence can shift perceptions and alter lives even when the world tries to make her feel small. Her actions prove that true power comes from within, not from external validation or status.